Yeah, buddy, hour 4, Lindsay, Lawler,
Yeah!
Jimmy Mack, Road Gang Radio. Take it away.
We back. Jim, well, we're just as all-American as we can be today. We go hamburgers, and then we shift to fireworks because it's the 4th of July, and we're cliche. We are basic peas around here. So, here we go. All right, joining us next, James Fuller from the American Pyrotechnics Association, APA, y'all. He's a man who knows more about fireworks safety than dads out there know about smoking ribs. I don't know. He's a former firefighter. He's a consultant, a former chief of staff at the U.S. Consumer Product Safety Commission, and a guy who spent his life making sure that your 4th of July doesn't end up at the ER or in jail, perhaps. James, welcome to the show. Thank you for keeping us safe, keeping our pets sane. We're going to talk about how to make this a fun. We don't want to be boring, so it's the hashtag balance. Have fun, but don't end up in the ER. Good morning, James. How are you?
Good morning, New Orleans. I'm doing great, and happy 4th of July holiday. It's good to hear your voice. How y'all doing today?
Oh, we are doing grand and glorious. And by the way, people don't know this, but Louis Armstrong actually was arrested on the 4th of July for actually firing off a pistol instead of having fireworks. We want to avoid that outcome.
And boy.
That's an absolutely true story, by the way. People can also go to celebratesafety.org. It is great to have you, James. We really appreciate you being here. And by the way, how long were you a firefighter?
So I was a firefighter in New Mexico at the ripe old age of 15 until I was 21 years old. I was a volunteer firefighter in Roswell, New Mexico.
Can you talk, and by the way, we live in a very different universe now. What was the training like to become a volunteer firefighter at the age of 15, and what kind of shape were you in by the time you turned 16?
With the aliens in Roswell, by the way, too.
No kidding, right? I could tell you that story, but that'd take another hour and a couple of hurricanes. It's a great question. So in a rural community like that, we had the opportunity to join because it was an important need for our community, and most of our fire department was volunteer. And so we were made aware of that through an Explorer program. I was involved with the ambulance service as an Explorer, and they said, hey, we need more people with medical training. So I raised my hand, and I had to go through a summer of training at the Fire Institute in New Mexico in Hobbs, the beautiful city of Hobbs, New Mexico. So a full summer.
Oh my God! And I can only imagine it's like a miniaturized version of boot camp as well. And by the way, it's a great reminder how many of our friends out there who are firefighters, first responders, get into it at an early age because it's the kind of crazy stuff that only people between the ages of about 15 and 25 are willing to do on first impulse. You got to train that into people, man. I'm telling you, people. It's amazing. Once you get past about 25, the idea of doing dangerous and daring things becomes much harder and harder, does it not?
Unless you marry a jackass.
Oh, okay.
Well, there you go. Hey, I'm glad my wife's not on this interview because we don't want two opinions on that one. But to your point, about the second roof that fell in on my head, I went to my dad and said, Dad, I think I'm going to find something else to do. So he says, well, maybe you ought to be a lawyer. I didn't become a lawyer, so I think I did okay. But I'm so glad you guys are talking about fireworks safety. It's such an important issue this time of year. I don't know if you've seen the statistics, but we did have an increase in injury. And so as an industry, one injury, one death, that's too many with fireworks. And so it's so important that you're taking time from your program to, give folks a little bit of information, some safety tips as they're driving into work this morning. And so I really appreciate you giving us this time.
Well, yeah, and I love that that you have this series, that your safety video series is literally called "Don't Be That Guy," because that's a great balance of you're being safe, but you're also poking fun. Because it is a fun thing. We don't want to. You also don't want to be the guy that takes all the fun out of it, right? So, but you're trying to keep it fun but yet family friendly. And so we know that every family has that guy. Don't be that guy, the one with the Roman candle in one hand, the beer in the other hand. And which is just a bad combination, obviously. And so I'm curious, what are the things, let's talk about, and this is, you can go to the website, he's got plenty of information in the series, but let's talk about, the things that we need to avoid, top 3, if you're, these dads and everybody out there that wants to be the spectacle and have fun, because, James, last year we went out to this huge farm to see some friends, and all the ranch hands came around to do the fireworks at night, and I'm like, that's cool. However, I'm like, I've been here for 3 hours prior to the fireworks, and I have seen those ranch hands at the bar for those 3 hours that are now heading down to the bottom to set up the fireworks. So let's talk about, obviously alcohol is a big thing here, but let's talk about the top 3 things perhaps that you can do to keep it fun but also keep it safe?
Well, that's a great question. So first, to your point, alcohol, drugs, and fireworks, they just don't mix. Everybody I know loves, or lots of folks that love the libations during the holiday, but, we can enjoy the fireworks, put those fireworks off, and have somebody that's going to stay responsible, just like you have a responsible driver when you go out at night, that's going to wait a little while, put on the fireworks show, and then they can enjoy their drinking. It's super important. So number one, alcohol, drugs, they don't mix. Put that beer aside, wait till your show is over, and then enjoy them after the show. Number two, fireworks are really, let's be clear, they are an explosive. They do emit a heat that could burn you significantly, and they have enough thrust. Those aerials have enough thrust that they can even kill. By way of example, we had more than 4 deaths last year from people being irresponsible and either holding a firework or, can you believe this, putting a firework on their head. Now think about that. You're a dad and you're just trying to show off a little, and you put a firework on your head, and it's being filmed by your wife, and that's what your whole family has to remember. That's not the holiday season anybody wants. So never hold a firework that's lit. Never point a firework that's lit at anybody. The only place for a firework that's proper that's lit is on the ground, right? So number two, never hold a firework. Never light and point a firework at anybody. Don't use a body part to launch your fireworks. Please don't be that guy. And then you have a great time. The third item, and this is hard. I'm a firefighter, but you know what? I'm also a parent, and I'm a parent first. And boy, that draw of giving that young child that sparkler is always there. But again, just a sparkler will burn at 1,200 degrees. Now, that's a third-degree burn instantly. Now, let's just go back in time. When you were a kid and you had one of those little wire sparklers, you run around the backyard, and that little sparkler goes out, and you're ready for your next one. What'd you do with that sparkler? Threw it on the ground, right? And then your brother comes around, and he steps on it. So even a sparkler will burn. Make sure if you're going to let young children use sparklers, make sure they're old enough to understand that that's a very hot device. You're watching them very, very closely, and you only do it under adult supervision. So that's the third one. Leave the fireworks to adults, and if you're going to let young children use them, make sure they're responsible enough and give them supervision, because even a sparkler will give you a third-degree burn.
Wow, just wow. Dre's got a question. Our producer has a question for you because he's so excited about fireworks. Go ahead, Dre. Take it away.
So you're telling me my Uncle Stevie with a bunch of Coors Light, a gas can, and an M80 showing kids how to do fireworks isn't a good idea?
Yeah,
I'm
going to say we're going to say that's a no-go. No-go. That's a no-go. Let's reconvene. I know you're just spitballing here.
That's my childhood, man.
Maybe let's re-rack on that one.
Okay.
Let's rethink that one. Yeah.
Well,
no bottle rocket shootings either.
Well, this is actually brings up a point, James, because as Dre just said, well, hey, that's my childhood. And that's the thing. This is a consistent story that we see or we know, or at least we used to. And it's like, well, nothing happened. So nothing happened. We did it and we were fine. But let's talk about it. It just takes the one time. You can be fine 99% of the time. It's the 1% time when something goes wrong and you die, or someone gets hurt, or you end up in the ambulance. So James, that's the thing, right? It's like people are like, but that's what we did all the time. That doesn't mean it's okay.
Well, it's Murphy's Law, right? We don't have a problem until we have a problem. Nothing goes wrong until something goes wrong. And I just have seen it enough. You don't want to respond to that environment where you go to a backyard barbecue and you're seeing your dad or your uncle, and he's only got 3 fingers left, right? That's not the image we want for the 4th of July. And it's not necessary. These are very stable, very safe products. Every product we sell has instructions on it. And, that's an important point I want to raise with you. We have seen an increase in the use of non-consumer based. So what I'm talking about would be professional grade or professional use only fireworks by consumers. And I want to encourage everybody, please, please, please don't do that. Don't be that guy. And I'm going to give you a really easy way to tell whether or not you have a consumer product or you have a professional use only product. If you recall, if you've ever seen a firework, they're very brightly packaged. They're one of the best, most brightly consumer packaged products in the country. There's a reason for that. We want you to be able to instantly tell whether or not this product is consumer grade or professional use. If you go up to a product and it's all in that brown, like that brown paper sack look, that's not a consumer product. If it doesn't have a warning label on it and it doesn't have instructions on the box, that's not a consumer product. We have seen a marked increase in the number of injuries that are happening because people are being talked into, or they're buying online or they're not buying from a reputable dealer, and I'll tell you how to find out if whether or not your person that's selling your fireworks is licensed and reputable, but they're buying these professional use only fireworks, and they don't recognize the difference. It's a significant difference in the amount of explosives, and those explosives, if you're not trained and have the certification, can be very dangerous. So only use consumer products. And how do you know when you get one from a reputable licensed provider? If you go to a booth, a stand, or a store, they have to have a license prominently put up on the door. And the great news there is if you buy product there, you know it's legal to use at that location, right? So that's also important. And I want to talk about that. We talk about in our campaign staying legal, right? Not be legal. I say stay legal because we all know we often have to leave the city of New Orleans, right? Drive down the road a little bit, and then all of a sudden our fireworks stands show up in those unincorporated areas of the parishes.
Talking to Slidell. There you go,
we
man.
all know the road. We take the road trip. And then what do? We throw them in the car. We drive back into downtown New Orleans, and guess what? It's illegal there, isn't it? It's illegal in my backyard, or it's not permitted, or the aerials aren't permitted, only ground-based. So if you're buying fireworks, stay legal. Where and when you use those fireworks, that's the most important part. And you can always check your local listings. It's always on your fire department and your major city webpage. So be a responsible parent. You don't want to have the cops knocking on the door, disrupting your barbecue. Fines for using illegal fireworks can go up to $2,000 per instance. And guess what? They compensate your goods. So don't ruin your fireworks. Don't ruin your 4th of July. Make sure you stay legal. Buy from a licensed dealer. You can always tell if it's a consumer product because it'll be brightly packaged. It'll have a warning label. And make sure you're legal where and when you're going to use those products.
Okay, so what we're doing here, both organically and intentionally, is we're kind of setting the stage to not be that guy, but to be the guy that does it right.
Yeah.
So we've talked about the idea of finding a reputable dealer. We've talked about the idea of staying legal. So let's say that I've got my reputable dealer. I've got my legal situation all worked out. How do I create the perfect space to actually launch these fireworks? How do I create an environment in a legal area to launch these fireworks and to make sure all the kids around me have a great time watching me do it, because I don't want the 5-year-old doing it. I'm looking at you, Lindsay. I know you're just passing out ammunition right now to Freya. No, but
that's me.
Yeah, that's you.
I'm that guy.
I love it.
But
I love it. Okay, I'm going to do this with just 2 steps. 2 simple steps that you can take to make sure you're at a safe location, right? Number 1, can I put my spectators at a safe distance away from where I'm going to light that firework, and is that surface level? Number 1. So do I have a level surface to light my fireworks off, and can I keep those folks at a safe distance away that are going to be watching my show? That's number 1, okay? Now, let's talk about that surface. We recommend it's concrete, dirt, gravel, some kind of a pavement. That's the best surface to use, okay? Now, lots of people don't have that opportunity, and so they're going to select grass. That's okay, but make sure it is not dry grass. It's flammable, right? And if it's going to be grass and you have any of our aerial devices that will shoot something into the air, okay, which are our most popular product, I want you to bring along with you a couple of bricks, a couple of big rocks, or a couple of sandbags. And I want you to block that product, right? The tube that you're going to put your product in, or that big box you buy, just put those 2 bricks up against each side. And what we're doing there is, because of that grass, we just want to make sure that product won't tip over, or you don't brush along it after you've lit it and it tips over, right? So number 1, you got to have a safe location that is flat, the right kind of surface. It can be grass, but you need to make sure you block that product if it's grass, and it's got to be green grass. And we really do prefer, and we recommend highly, that it's a flat surface that's either dirt, gravel, or pavement. Okay, so that's the first step. Okay, number 2, you need to have a water source nearby. If you don't have a water source nearby, don't be that guy with that site. Right. So that can be easily accomplished. Either a water hose, that's perfect, right? Have a water hose from the neighbor, or a water hose from the backyard. The second option is bring along a 5-gallon bucket of water. Now, I'm going to tell you later, when we talk about proper disposal, why that 5-gallon bucket of water is so important, okay? But that's the only 2 things you got to do. Pay attention to your location. Make sure you got a good-sized distance. You got a flat surface that's not going to light up on fire. And then number 2, you cannot do a show if you do not have access to water. And if you don't have access to a water hose, bring along a 5-gallon bucket of water.
Well, so I have 2 questions here. I mean, Chris, that was the last guy. Sorry, James. Would you say it's better just not to do it all, go to a professional show, or do you really want to find ways so people can partake in it? Because ultimately it's like, don't have sex, kids, don't do drugs, don't do fireworks. Is that what we're saying? Or do you...
I think it's like, no, we really do think you can have a wonderful time. And I would say, by way of example, we've put on lots of professional shows, and I still every year love my consumer show I put on for my family. It's such a wonderful family tradition. Like you said, there's things that come in our lives that you'll never forget, right? And I remember being taught by my father how to do fireworks. I remember vividly being able to go and buy that firework tranche and get ready for the show. So I don't think we want anybody to quit using consumer fireworks. But what we don't want is we don't want anybody to have a holiday that was unanticipated. We don't want an unintended fire, and we certainly don't want any injuries. And so what we're trying to do is just make sure you have these very simple safety tips that you follow. And if you follow those simple safety tips, you're going to be fine. You're going to have a great time. You're going to be safe, and you're going to put on a show that the family gets to own. It's a memory that can never go away. Some of my fondest memories are over the 4th of July with my family.
By the way,
the follow-up to that,
yes,
James, is let's bust a myth, because I grew up thinking sparklers were just the training wheels of fireworks, but we read that those burn hotter than almost anything. So are sparklers safe for kids, or are we just handing them mini blowtorches?
No, here's where I put that. If they understand temperature and heat, and they can have a conversation with you, and you're going to supervise them, they're safe with a sparkler, right? But if you can't have a conversation with that child, so now you're down at about that 3 or 4 year old where they really don't quite understand everything you're telling them, or they might understand it, but they don't tend to follow it, then I would say that's probably too young for that sparkler, right? They're still going to enjoy the wow. I mean, we've all seen those young children see those lights and their eyes just get big as quarters, right? So give them that excitement. And guess what? When they're about 5, 6 years old, we'll hand them over that sparkler with an adult right next to them, and they get introduced to a wonderful family tradition.
Yeah, and I was kind of curious to kind of follow this up, the idea that this is not a matter. I don't know if you've ever seen the movie Under Siege with Steven Seagal, where there's a great moment where he says, "I told you not to do this," and he goes, "Yes, sir, you did." He said, "And you're doing it anywhere," and he goes, "Yes, sir,
That's right.
I did." He said, "So it's become clear I can't control you, so I might as well support you." You're actually saying, to kind of follow up and kind of put the button on Lindsay's question, you are actually saying that you want people doing this, but you want them doing this according to the methodology that you've laid out.
100%. And we're often in communities. I'll give you an example. I was talking to a radio group in Utah yesterday, and Utah is having some tremendously dry weather, and Governor Cox in Utah decided to up-level their warnings. And so there's going to be no fireworks in some areas of the state of Utah. And I'm the first to jump on that radio show and say, folks, put your fireworks down, go to the professional show this year. We have to be responsible. And, you don't ever want to be the person that looks over after you've lit up a firework and over across the street you're seeing a brush fire. Or even worse, you're seeing a house and the roof's on fire. So you're right. We have to follow the rules. If you want to play good in sports, you got to be good at following the rules, right? And that's just the same here. These are devices that, to your point, as we grew up earlier in our lives, we might have had a lot more exposure to these types of activities. And now in this new generation, they may only touch these types of devices once a year during the 4th of July, right? So we just need to make sure we're out there giving everybody these really safe, easy safety tips. We make sure and train people at all of our locations so they can give these same kind of safety tips to anybody that's a new consumer of fireworks. And if you follow those safety tips, you're going to have a great time, no worries whatsoever.
Okay, so we want to talk about some of the things you've seen, James. But before that, so in the
Sure.
chat, we've got Dave Nemo, our namesake around here, saying, "Is it safe to deep fry a turkey while shooting fireworks?" Dave, the answer is no. You know that answer.
No, but I want invited to Dave's party. Okay?
Exactly.
Tell Dave +1 coming your way from Texas.
I think Dave has proven that he is that guy. Speaking of Texas, Roscoe 713 Texas is a shout out to you listening as well. And then Bruce Almighty, here we go, James. He wants to know, did you ever put out any UFO fires?
No, I never got the opportunity to meet a UFO. I sure did, and I wish I did. But it's funny. I grew up in Roswell, right? And that UFO story was never, ever a story. And then all of a sudden, about our junior year in high school, some professor at the Military Institute there in Roswell brought out this, UFO book, and we were like, oh my gosh, we didn't even know we were famous. So yeah, it's a good story. There's not a lot of reasons to visit Roswell, New Mexico, and so when the alien story came about, we actually had people coming in to see our town, and so it was quite exciting.
Well, maybe they're coming. Maybe there's still time for you, James. But back to the original question. So as a former firefighter, you've seen a lot of stuff, and I'm going to ask this question so you could go two sides. One, I want to hear the craziest, like funny and fun thing you've ever seen. But then let's end on but follow that up with, and one of the craziest 4th of July emergency you had to deal with, because those kind of things are what people need to hear. Some people need to get punched in the face in order to realize they've got to get their you-know-what together. So let's say something kind of fun and funny you saw, but then also maybe a situation. Scare our listeners a little bit, if you will.
Sure. So I'm going to tell you the funniest one was on a non-4th of July, believe it or not. I can't recall, but I think it was probably, midsummer, and we get called out to a barn fire, right? Because we live in a rural community. That's not an uncommon thing. So, okay, we got a barn fire, which generally we're not too worried about barns. Well, we pull up to this barn, and it's not too involved yet. So I thought, well, heck, let's go ahead and see if we can get in there and light it down and at least, save some of the structure. So we start getting our gear on, and we're going into the perimeter, and we're about to breach the door, and man, that thing lights up, and boom, 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 and I'm like, what in the heck is going on? That is not something you would expect going up to a hay barn. Well, the old guy had about 10 boxes of fireworks in the back, So anyways, that was not an experience we were ready to expect, and I got knocked on my drawers. So that was a little scary, but also really funny, Their entry comes up and says, yeah, I probably should have told you there were some fireworks in the back. I'm like, yeah, that was nice to know. Well, needless to say, we didn't save the barn. So the barn went down.
All right.
Now, on the not funny side, though, and I kind of alluded to this, we were called out to a backyard barbecue. We had somebody that was using a reloadable. The reloadable was put in the tube. The tube didn't work properly, and he lost 2 fingers. And it happened in front of his whole family. And, you're going to survive that, right? Horrible incident. You're going to survive that. What I can tell you, though, is when you're sitting there and you're preparing them and getting them ready to get them on the ambulance and you're looking around, people will never forget that night. Your whole family will remember that. And that touches your heart. And I'll never forget it. Yeah. We were rolling him up to the ambulance, and he says, man, I'm so embarrassed. He goes, I'll never be able to look my kids in the face. Now, just think about that. Here's a papa trying to do the best he can for his family, had no intentions to have something go wrong, and had that was he just lost 2 fingers, and he's getting into the ambulance, and he's embarrassed and sad because he didn't want to see something like that happen. So take those precautions. And here, I'm going to give you a great tip on that. Normally, our default when we're lighting a firework is what? Your cigarette lighter, right? Right?
Yeah.
Don't do that. I'm going to encourage you, when you buy your fireworks, pick up some punks. You might not know what that is, but they look
No, I've got 2 here. They work for me. The names are Madison and Foamaster Dre. So.
I'm also, I got to advise you, it's against the law to set your colleagues on fire. You cannot be that guy. Don't be that guy.
So close.
Be that guy.
Dude, if we would have had you on yesterday, we would have been in a different situation then. But now we know.
We know now. Thank you.
You guys need to watch your back over there. Now, but use that punk, and it's a really good device to light, and it'll stay lit for about 15 minutes. But here's what it really does. It moves you another 18 inches away from that device, right? Because when you're holding that punk, you get a whole nother foot or more where you're away from the fuse, you're away from the device. What does that do? That moves my entire body out of the proximity of that explosive. That's just smart, right? So always use a punk, or worst case, if you didn't get a punk, pick up a fireplace lighter, right? That's going to give you at least another 8 inches of space between you and the fuse. If you didn't get punks, you pull by any TNT store, and I got a bunch of them there in New Orleans, and we'll give them to you free. Okay? That's how important it is.
AmericanPyro.com and CelebrateSafety.org. Safety.org are the places you should go and check out all that they have to offer over there. Okay, we're almost done here, but we've done everything. We've had an absolute blast. I want you to kind of complete the circle and restore the space. How should we exit once we've actually done our bit and had our fun?
Oh, man, I'm so glad you asked about that. This is actually kind of a citizen message, but it's an act responsibly message too, right? Let's be good citizens. Everybody knows wherever you go, you should leave that place better and nicer than you left it, than when you got there, right? And so everybody needs to know when you have fireworks, at the end of the day, you're going to have trash. You're going to have product that needs to be properly disposed of. So be a good citizen. Make sure you bring some trash bags along if you're using a park or you're at a location and it's not your backyard, okay? We need to make sure we pick up what we brought with us. But you need to do that properly so you don't have the potential for an unintended fire. And that's a very common instance. We're all done. We've had a great time. Let's close the place down, get everybody out of the house. Let's go to bed. Put all that fireworks in our trash receptacle, roll it up against the garage. We wake up at 2 in the morning, the garage is on fire. So remember I told you, bring that 5-gallon bucket, or you got to have a water source, or the show is a no-go, right? Now, if you have that water source, that bucket, this is going to sound funny, but I want you to give that firework a bath after you've used it, okay? And what that's going to do is it's going to make sure we have no embers, no heat emission left in those devices. Those devices will get very, very hot, especially the multi-fire box devices. They have a tendency sometimes to spark later and become a fire. So if you give that firework a bath, just douse it in that 5-gallon bucket, set it aside for 10 minutes. Once it's completely cool to the touch, then and only then you can bag it up and put it in a proper trash receptacle. That's being responsible. So really glad you asked about that. We don't want our city workers out there, our county workers out there doing your job. That's not fair to them.
All right, let's have a little with you, James. Since you are the expert here, let's ask you a few of your favorites. What is your personal favorite firework? A lot of them have these wild names as well. So.
Oh yeah. I love one called Corruption. Okay, that's one of those multi-shot devices, and it has about 100 different shots to it. And I'll give you advice to those consumers that may not know, how do I get the best bang for my buck, right? You know, fireworks in today's day and age with the economy, things are expensive. So what I encourage people to do is look at our value boxes. Most fireworks locations will have what's called a value box. That way you're going to get a number of different devices, but you're going to get a good discount off that product. And what I love about it is the teams really put a lot of time into that to give you different colors, different kinds of explosives. You know, I think what most consumers don't recognize is, and if you watch and you look at the labels, you can really make sure you can really match what you want. Like you might want only red, white, and blue, right? Well, you can buy only red, white, and blue fireworks. I like a mix, and I like the fireworks to kind of spread out so I can do a couple of different looks. So those value packs are going to give you that kind of combination. But my favorite is Corruption, okay? And I know that sounds terrible. And then there's another one I like.
No, that's pretty on brand with America right now. That's okay.
By the way, we ought to send a couple of cases up to the Congress building, right? But no, that's going to get me in trouble. But I love that one. But then any of the multi-shot devices, what we call in the industry cakes, those are those boxes. Those are a great box. Now, I know folks will go, oh, goodness, those run around $100, maybe $75 to start. I encourage you, buy at least one of those, because they're so wonderful and they're very safe. Light once, you get 12, 14, maybe 20 shots.
Outstanding, by the way. We got to let you go, man. James Fuller, by the way, former firefighter, former chief of staff, all-around safety guy who somehow manages to make sure you're also having a good time along with taking care of the people you love, has joined us on the day before the 4th of July. Happy 4th to you. God bless you. You're a great American, my friend, and I mean that from the bottom of our heart over here at Radio Nemo. Thank you so much for being a part of the conversation.
Thanks, James.